Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive. Today, we're embarking on a pretty fascinating journey into ancient wisdom, exploring what it truly means to achieve, well, true understanding. We're diving into a really profound text, The Path to True Understanding, Meditation and Wisdom. It offers quite a unique perspective on perception, reality, and the whole path to liberation. Think of it like this. Our mission today is to unpack how these ancient traditions suggest we can move beyond just, theory, beyond just reading about it, to get to a deep personal realization, almost like a shortcut to seeing the world and, your own mind with real clarity. That's what we're exploring.
Absolutely. And what's so compelling here, I think, is how these teachings manage to connect these really deep philosophical insights with very practical, step-by-step guidance. We're not just looking at abstract ideas. We're examining a framework, really, that suggests liberation isn't just about what you know. It's fundamentally about how you perceive and experience reality itself.
Okay, let's dig into that core idea then. The text jumps right in, highlighting true understanding as just paramount. But what exactly is it, for us listening, and why is it presented as so incredibly crucial?
Right. So in this tradition, this true understanding, or mersher, as it's sometimes termed, is seen as the absolute key. The key to liberation from what they call samsara, which is, well, essentially that cycle of suffering, dissatisfaction, existence that we often find ourselves in. It's not presented as just a nice-to-have concept. It's the fundamental shift needed to actually break free. And the core insight here, the real heart of it, is understanding the empty nature of phenomena, sometimes called emptiness or...
Empty nature of phenomena. Okay, that sounds potentially a bit abstract or maybe even negative. What does that actually mean in practice?
Yeah, it can sound that way initially, but it basically means realizing that things, thoughts, feelings, even ourselves, don't exist independently. They don't have inherent fixed qualities sort of stamped onto them from their own side. Think about a rainbow. We see it, it appears real, it's beautiful, right? But it doesn't have a solid, independent existence you can go grab. It arises from specific conditions, sunlight, water droplets, your angle of viewing. It's empty of being a permanent standalone thing.
Okay. So it's about conditions and interdependence.
Exactly. And this teaching suggests that everything we experience is like that rainbow. Our thoughts, our emotions, even our sense of me. They arise, they seem real, but they're empty of having some fixed, separate, unchanging core.
So what happens if we don't grasp this? If we continue seeing things as solid, separate, independently real, what are the consequences according to the text?
Well, the text is quite direct, actually. It says something like, people who do not understand emptiness will never achieve liberation. Quote, they are stuck in the prison of solidified forms of existence, unable to break free from the web of ignorance. It strongly suggests that without getting this fundamental insight right, all our other efforts, spiritual practice, self-help, whatever, might be sincere, but they won't cut the root of suffering. It's like, polishing the leaves of a sick tree instead of treating the root disease.
That really puts the pressure on getting the view right. Which brings up a really important question, I think. How do we even know if our understanding is correct? How can we tell true insight from just, another mistaken idea?
That's a critical question. And the text actually quotes the Master Naropa on this. He uses this great analogy. He says something along the lines of, if you possess a correct view, meditation and behavior will naturally align. You will achieve your goal enlightenment, like a well-trained horse reaching its destination, even on a difficult path. But, he says, if your view is mistaken, then your meditation and your behavior will also be incorrect, and they'll lead you astray. Then you won't reach your goal, like a blind person just wandering around in the darkness. So it really emphasizes that the foundation, that perspective, that view, it shapes everything that follows. It's absolutely foundational.
Okay, so true understanding is the destination. The correct view is crucial. What's the map then? How do we get there? The source lays out a kind of threefold path, doesn't it?
It does. It's a path rooted in what they call insight practice, or ejamaro. And it involves three key stages, really. They build on each other. First, listening to teachings. So acquiring the theoretical knowledge, hearing the explanations. Second, reflecting on what you've heard. This isn't passive. It's really engaging intellectually, analyzing the concepts, asking questions, letting it sink in. And third, meditation. And this is where, as the text says, it's hard to overestimate the importance.
Right. So even if we read all the books, listen to all the talks, think really deeply about it, that's still not enough by itself.
Precisely. The source is very clear on this. It says something like, even if we possess deep knowledge and dedicate a lot of time to reflecting, We will never achieve true understanding if we do not transform our theoretical knowledge into personal experiential insight through the practice of meditation. The listening and the reflecting, they have to lead into meditation, that direct experience. And this isn't just one specific school saying this. It's emphasized across pretty much all Buddhist traditions, that leap from head knowledge to, you could say, heart knowledge or lived experience.
That makes a lot of sense. Transforming knowledge into experience, that's powerful. We all know the difference between knowing about something and actually knowing it, right? But when we sit down to meditate, what exactly are we supposed to be meditating on? Where do we focus our attention to get this insight?
Yeah, good question. Often the journey starts by looking at our perception itself, how we see the world. There's a quote from the Secret Assembly Tantra that goes something like, "We analyze the nature of mind to understand that our perception of the external world is determined by the content of our consciousness. Then," it says, "we come to understand the non-duality of the true nature of phenomena as they are."
So it's not just that the stuff out there is empty, but how we see that stuff is heavily influenced by what's going on in here, in our own minds. That's a big claim, because the world feels pretty solid and independent most of the time.
Yeah.
How do these teachings square that feeling with this idea?
That's a really important point. Our concepts, our biases, our past experiences, our mental habits, they act like filters, They heavily shape what we perceive. Imagine walking into a busy street market. One person might just see noise and stress. Another sees vibrant energy. Someone else might focus on the colors of the fruit. The market itself is, well, the market, but the experience is heavily conditioned by their internal state, their mental filters. So once we start to grasp how much our external experience is mind conditioned, the next really profound step is to turn that analysis inward, onto the mind itself. The Lankavatara Sutra points to this. First, we conclude that our experience of perceiving external phenomena is conditioned and created by the mind itself. Once we understand the role of the mind, it continues, we must then understand that this very mind lacks independent existence.
Oh, okay, so first the world isn't independently existent. Now the mind doing the perceiving isn't independently existent either. That feels like pulling the rug out from under. Well, everything.
It is a fundamental shift, a really deep one. The text actually says, we can consider ourselves firmly on the Mahayana path only when we have realized these two aspects of non-independent existence, both the object and the subject, so to speak. It's about recognizing that the mind, which is so skilled at creating appearances and interpreting reality, isn't itself a fixed, solid thing. It's more like a flowing river than a static rock, constantly changing, arising from conditions lacking a permanent core.
Okay, this is getting deep. How do we actually do this? How do we perform this kind of analysis to understand something so subtle about our own minds and how we see things? It sounds challenging.
It is challenging, but there's a tool. This is where what they call discriminating wisdom comes in. And it's supported by careful logical analysis. The text is quite emphatic. All aspects of reality lack independent existence, and this cannot be understood without applying logical analysis. So we use our intellect, sharpen it.
But wait, didn't you say earlier we shouldn't get too hung up on logic? That we need to move beyond theory. How do we balance using sharp analysis with the goal of, direct non-conceptual experience?
That is the crucial balance point. Absolutely. We need to develop those analytical skills. We use logic to deconstruct our assumptions about reality, about ourselves, about the mind. But the goal isn't just endless intellectual gymnastics. The goal is to use that analysis to cut through the illusion of solidity and then learn to rest, to abide in a state of contemplation. There's advice in the stages of meditation text. First, learn to keep the mind in a state of calm, then delve into logical analysis, and only after that will discriminating wisdom be born from analytical investigation. So, calm first, then analysis leads to wisdom. And there's that amazing analogy from the Kashyapa Sutra again, about the two wooden sticks. If two wooden sticks are rubbed against each other, they begin to smolder. The wind fans it into a flame in which these sticks then burn. Similarly, it says, when non-dual wisdom arises from logical analysis and discriminating wisdom, it burns the concepts that were necessary for its emergence.
Wow. So the analysis itself, the logic, the concepts we use, they're like the kindling. They help start the fire of wisdom, but then that wisdom consumes the very kindling that started it. That's really interesting. So the fire burns, the concepts are gone. What happens then? What's the next step after the analysis has done its work?
Exactly. The wisdom arises from the ashes, you could say. And The ultimate insight, perhaps, is that it's not just the object we analyze, like a chair or a thought, that lacks independent existence. And it's not just the process of analysis, but even the insight itself, that penetrating wisdom, also doesn't possess independent existence. A sutra puts it simply: when we realize that it's impossible to find independent existence in any phenomenon, we gain wisdom.
So the understanding of no independent existence also has no independent existence.
Right.
Okay, yeah, that's like a hall of mirrors. The rabbit hole just keeps going deeper.
It does. And this leads directly to the practical instruction: allow the mind to abide in its natural state, which means clearing it of those conceptual layers, ideas of subject and object, me and other, perceiver and perceived, letting go of the mental chatter. And crucially, while doing this, staying vigilant against those two big obstacles: mental dullness or lethargy, like the mind getting foggy or sleepy, and agitation or excitement, where the mind is just restless, jumping all over the place.
This natural state, what does that actually feel like? Is it just blankness? How would someone recognize it?
It's not blankness, more like clarity. Atisha, a great teacher, described true meditation beautifully. He said, "To abide with an uncomplicated mind in the awareness of uncomplicated reality, this is true meditation." He explained further that the true nature of things, this emptiness, has no beginning, no end, no center, no periphery. It is beyond thought and concepts. So when you can allow your mind to just rest in this open, aware, uncontrived state, free from being pulled into sleepiness or scattered thoughts, that's when you achieve deep meditative concentration, samadhi. It's not something you force. It's what naturally emerges when the grasping and constructing stops.
Okay, that sounds incredibly profound, but still maybe a little abstract for someone trying to actually practice. You mentioned Atisha. Does he offer a more concrete method? Like, how do we practically do this analytical meditation to get there?
Yes, thankfully he does. In his text, The Brief Essential Instructions, Atisha outlines a pretty clear method for exactly this kind of analytical meditation. You start, he says, by applying that logical analysis to the external world, really looking closely. You examine how subject and object, the seer and the seen, the perceiver and the perceived, are really just conceptual labels. They lack separate, independent existence. You work through this, really seeing how your mind co-creates your experience of the external world, that the treeness isn't just out there, but arises with your perception. Then, and this is the key move, you turn that same sharp analytical focus onto the mind itself, the perceiver. You examine the mind's current state. You might use specific techniques suggested, like the 3 times analysis. Where did this present thought come from? Past, does it have solidity right now? Present, where will it go? Future. You see, it's just fleeting. Or you could use the one-many analysis. Is my mind one single thing? Or is it just a stream of many different moments, thoughts, feelings? You can't find a single mind. Or origination cessation. How do thoughts actually arise? Where do they come from? How do they vanish? You see, they don't have a solid start or end point.
And when we really dig in like that, analyzing the mind's present state, using these methods, what's a typical discovery? What insight comes from that?
The discovery consistently is that the mind has no form, no color, and no substantiality. You can't pin it down. It's not a static thing sitting there in your head. It's not an entity you can find if you look closely enough. It's recognized more as this empty, clear, knowing quality, aware, but constantly changing without any fixed core or essence.
Right. And once we have that realization, that direct taste of the mind's lack of substance, do we just keep analyzing forever? Or is that when we shift gears?
That's exactly when you shift gears. Remember the fire stick analogy. The discriminating wisdom, the analysis, has done its job. It burned away the concepts of a solid mind and solid phenomena. Once that understanding is gained, the instruction is very clear. Leave the mind as it is. Quote, not allowing it to be distracted by obstacles like lethargy and excitement. We should not engage in conceptual constructs and not make judgments. The analysis served its purpose to break down the illusion. Now you rest in the clarity that was revealed, like putting down the ladder once you're on the roof, as you said.
Okay. So analyze the world, analyze the mind, realize their lack of inherent existence, let go of the analysis, and now resting in that natural awareness. Is that the end? Or is there one final layer, maybe a last conceptual trap?
There is, according to these texts, a final subtle step. We need to go beyond the ideas that phenomena either possess or do not possess independent existence. This means not getting attached even to the concept of emptiness itself, seeing emptiness not as a thing, but as the lack of inherent existence. If you make emptiness into a new solid concept, you're still caught in concepts. There's a beautiful line from the Sutra of the King of Meditative Equilibrium that captures this. Analyzing conditioned and unconditioned phenomena, their substantiality and non-substantiality, the wise understand that emptiness itself does not possess independent existence. So the very insight, the very understanding of emptiness is itself empty.
Wow. It really is like the understanding refines itself until it transcends even its own name. Complete freedom from all fixed ideas, even the idea of freedom itself, perhaps.
Exactly that. Kamal Shila points this out in his commentary. When performing analytical investigation, we must remain in a state of contemplation. The aim isn't just winning an intellectual argument with yourself. It's about abiding in that non-dual state, where the separation between the observer and the observed dissolves. The lamp, clarifying the path to enlightenment, sums up the whole journey so well. Having first established that phenomena lack independent existence, using concepts and logical analysis, we come to the realization of non-dual wisdom. The analysis leads beyond analysis.
What an absolutely incredible arc. We've really traced a path today, haven't we? From understanding why this true understanding and seeing the empty nature of phenomena is so critical, through the pillars of listening, reflecting, and especially meditating, all the way to these detailed methods of analytical meditation, and finally reaching a point beyond even the most subtle concepts.
It really shows a deeply systematic approach, doesn't it? It's not about just hoping for enlightenment or having blind faith. It's presented as a rigorous process of investigation, using the intellect combined with direct personal experience through meditation. The whole point seems to be meticulously dismantling our conceptual limitations to arrive at this state of non-dual wisdom, this authentic freedom.
It's such a powerful reminder that the path to deep insight isn't solely about adopting beliefs. It's about how you actively investigate, how you understand the very fabric of your reality, and, crucially, the nature of your own mind.
Which does leave us with a really potent question to ponder, doesn't it, for you listening? What might actually shift in your day-to-day life and how you react, how you relate to others, how you see yourself if you started to genuinely view your own mind, its thoughts, its emotions, even the act of understanding itself, as being just as fluid, just as interdependent, just as empty of a fixed, solid self as the world you perceive out there?
That's definitely something to sit with, a profound thought to carry with you. Thank you for diving deep with us today on this fascinating exploration.